So this is my 89 4runner, and right now it's sitting a little low in the rear. So I got myself some parts to fix that problem. There's also leaf springs. I just didn't want to put them on my hood because they'd scratch the paint and they're heavy. You know, we should probably just start this video. I don't know if these are the original leaf springs that came with my truck, but it's pretty much riding on the bump stops. So over the weekend, I decided to use the lifts at work to solve that problem. The suspension is not the only problem with this truck. It's got plenty of other problems, but it needs a nice stance to go with its nice engine. Before I get started on the lift kit, I'm going to change out the oil and filter for some nice AMSOIL products. Thanks AMSOIL for sponsoring the channel. And with the maintenance out of the way, we can start on the big project. This kit from Ironman 4x4 comes with new shock absorbers, leaf springs, shackles, U-bolts, torsion bars, and a new steering damper. The problem with working on a 30-year-old off-roader is that the amount of leaks and off-road trips that this thing has had over its life means that there is oil and dirt everywhere. Even if you think you've cleaned this thing, you haven't. If you have multiple days on a project like this, let everything soak in penetrating fluid or WD-40 overnight. I filmed as much of this as I could, but I only had my phone and a little bit of time, so some of my attempts to film this didn't go as well as planned. Okay, so I thought I could remove the leaf spring first. Turns out I'm gonna need to do the shocks first because this little bracket down here that holds the shock to the axle is only held on by the U-joint. It's not part of the axle. So it means that there's nothing supporting the axle if you take out the leaf spring because you have to take out the U-bolts to take out the leaf spring. So before my diff drops on the floor, I'm gonna take out the shock. Actually, no, wait a minute. I can't do that because I can't bolt up the U-bolt because the leaf spring needs to come out. So I need to support the axle. Cool, so this can't really be done in the air without supporting the axle the whole time. So before the new shock goes in, we need to disconnect this brake line, support the rear differential, and remove the leaf spring. Since the rear axle is only being supported by the suspension, you need to make sure that you do this one side at a time. The next step is assembling the shackle. The outside side of the shackle is always the one with the nipple. If you're ever wondering which side should be the outside, it's always the side with nipples. You want to have direct access to the nipples. It is very important to be able to get to the nipples whenever you need. They need attention, and you want to make sure that you give them that attention.
Nipple, I'm sorry. Nipple, I'm sorry. Nipple, I'm sorry.
With the leaf spring out, you can see how much beefier this new one is, but also how shot my original ones were. This new leaf spring is supposed to give a 2-inch lift, but anytime you replace leaf springs, you probably want to replace your bushings. The ones in the rear use the shackle as an insert, but the front bushing doesn't have any metal sleeve. Luckily, this shop is full of tools, so my coworker Eric drilled out the original metal sleeve and we were able to reuse that. Other than that, the rear suspension is pretty straightforward. I did notice that a previous owner had used imperial bolts at one point instead of metric bolts, but this shop is full of tools, so we were able to find some that fit. Next up are the front shocks and the steering damper. These are a little trickier because the front shocks use a bayonet mount and the steering damper needs a ball joint removed. The ball joint gets replaced with this little guy here. You can see that it's got a tapered edge after the thread, so tightening this down is a bitch and a half. Up next are the bayonet mount front shocks. I thought these were going to be really hard, but this shop is full of tools, so having the right one makes this easy.
No, don't spin.
After that, we are moving on to the torsion bar. This is what acts as a spring for the front suspension. Basically, it's a solid metal rod, you give it 1/8 of a turn, and it wants to spring back to being straight. With this bolt, we can rotate the torsion bar, and that will adjust our front ride height. The splines on either end are marked. This is where basically each end is missing a tooth. What that means is that you can't put these in the wrong way. The passenger side came out no problem, but the driver's side was not letting go. Luckily, we have lots of tools here, so Eric decided to give it some persuading.
All right.
Oh boy.
A quick look at it.
Whoever had replaced this bolt before had basically cross-threaded it so badly that we had to break it to get it out. Luckily, this shop has lots of tools, so we managed to make a new one with some all-thread and a couple nuts. With that bolt in, though, we were able to put the wheels back on and get the truck back on the ground. So this is how it looks. It is definitely better. It's definitely a lot stiffer, though not bone-shatteringly stiff. Just, something to get used to. The old suspension is honestly not something that I can use to compare this to stock, because realistically, my leaf springs were so much worse than stock leaf springs. But overall, the truck feels tighter. It just feels better in every way. Admittedly, though, I haven't been able to put many miles on this truck to test it because it's having some transmission issues. And it's got a cracked windshield. And, the brakes aren't great right now. So I guess, I'm probably going to fix those things in another video. Or, I won't. And they'll just be magically fixed next time you see this truck.